Welcome back. The Army's asking Congress to put back $200 million it cut from programs during last year's night court review. The Secretary of the Army, Ryan McCarthy, says the second round of cuts won't save as much money as the first. Lieutenant General Tom Spoehr, U.S. Army retired, is director of the Center for National Defense, the Heritage Foundation. Tom, it's great to see you again. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you.
Is this a big deal or not such a big deal that the Army wants to put back some of the things that it took away last year?
So, Francis, the amount of money, $200 million, not big in the overall scheme of things. The Army's budget, $178 billion in 21. So not a big thing, but I think it shows the Army is being thoughtful. And so it's not a death sentence to be on the North Court list. You can come back from that, and that's what happened in this case. Some people must have made some fairly persuasive appeals, and they got their programs restored.
So that's the positive spin, no disrespect intended to your opinion. The other side of it, the more cynical look, might be that this was a negotiating tactic on the part of the Army last year, saying, we want to cut these things. Congress might go, oh, no, don't cut that. We'll give you more money. They didn't get more money, and they got what they got, and this is a recognition that maybe they shouldn't do that again. Am I reading that right, or am I too cynical after being in Washington?
I think that's a conspiracy theory. I really think, you read about the night court, it was like 12 hours or something like that, or 18 hours. They had to make a lot of decisions about thousands of programs. You're going to get some things wrong, and I think what we're seeing is some of these things they got wrong, and they listened to their staff, they listened to their commanders, and they said, you're right. Let's put that money back in. It's going to be too painful to do without those things, and so that's what happened.
What else did you see in the Army's budget request that jumped out at you, Tom?
Lots of different things. I think they're desperately trying to protect their research and development accounts, and so they had to give up a lot of procurement. They're very interested in their 6 modernization priorities and making sure those go forward, so they were willing to trade aircraft, vehicles, weapon systems, all kinds of things in order to keep their modernization priorities moving ahead.
I think that was my takeaway, is no distraction from the Big Six. They're serious about continuing that. Secretary McCarthy just as serious about continuing it as Secretary Esper was.
Yeah, and I think ruthless prioritization like that is helpful. And so in the past, the Army might have spread its seeds over a huge field and saw what grew. I think they have gotten past that. They know the future is fairly bleak in terms of increased funding, and so they're doing their best to fund their modernization priorities with the money they have.
What do you think is the biggest gap then moving forward? Or are you aligned with the Big Six that they're the right things that the Army needs to focus on?
Yeah, so I think the Big Six is right. I have written about how I think you have to have the sustainment systems to keep those things running. So if you're going to buy a new infantry fighting vehicle, make sure you've got the fueling assets, make sure you've got the maintenance assets. Those don't have the sexy priority that the Big Six do. I'd like to think the Army's paying attention to those, but only time will tell.
When it comes to sustainment, what do you see, if anything, or maybe this might not be an issue you've had a chance to look at, but regarding some long-term sustainment issues? I know for a long time the Army focused on different types of energy sources to be able to supply energy in different parts of the world where we might be as a result of great power competition and so on. Are you seeing that work continuing?
Yeah, they have continued their green power, their solar power types of things in order to stop having to truck fossil fuels over long convoys and put soldiers at risk. And so they're keeping those programs going thus far. We don't know what the future will bring. Those may end up on the chopping block as well as they try and keep these 6 priorities going.
And Secretary McCarthy said that the round of night court cuts that he'll work this year will be, here's the quote, much more tepid than last year. That's not a surprise, I would think, is it?
No, as you trim a tree, there's much less for the next year. So last year they looked at about 186 programs. They found some $33 billion over a 5-year period. This year it's about a third of that. And so they trimmed or they eliminated about 80 programs and found about $12 billion. And I think as time goes on, that's going to come smaller and smaller. All the easy things have been plucked.
As you look at the list, do you see anything that's muscle? Is the Army getting close to the bone, or are they still able to trim the fat and redirect that back to the Big Six?
There's a couple that I take issue with. They cut the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle, or JLTV as it's known, by a lot. And that's a fairly vehicle that's needed by the Army. It takes the place of the Humvee, which had no protection, didn't have enough power. And so when I see them cutting that, I know that they are getting close to the bone.
What are they cutting that out altogether? Delaying procurement?
Yeah, they have reduced the number. And so in 2021, they only proposed to buy about 1,900 of those vehicles. By now, they had hoped to be buying 3,000 plus, and so they've cut that buy way back.
What's your take overall on what you're seeing as far as the divestiture of legacy systems? Secretary McCarthy said recently we need to just basically get rid of this stuff as quickly as possible. The other branches are saying the same thing, so he's not unique among that.
Yeah, I think they've got it about right. I look at the list of things they have killed. Things like hydraulic excavators, other things like that, which you can envision a situation where they could use a contractor to do that, or maybe they already have enough in the Army. So I think they're doing it very thoughtfully, and they're making sure they're getting it right. So I'm encouraged by what I see.
We have less than a minute left, Tom. All of this is speculation at this point regarding the 2021 budget. We talked a bit before we went on the air. Congress will work its will on this. Do you see anything that the Army wants to do that you expect someone or some group in Congress will say, absolutely not, you have to keep doing what you're doing?
There is a constituency for everything in this town. So even the smallest tractor, the smallest thing has a small plant in Missouri or something like that. I found that out when I was on the Army staff the hard way. I would cut a trailer, and there's a small plant of 300 people that makes it. And so it's very painful. Some of these will not survive, I suspect, but I think in bulk they will.
General, thanks very much for coming on. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.